Humanity, I love you all with all my heart, with all my might. I'm so Ray. As you know, my videos are about love, infinity, creation, energy, because we're infinite love, we're infinite energy, we're infinite creation. Today is a very special video because it's about the prime mover. I have provided the mathematical equation of the prime mover. And this builds up on my previous mathematical proof of infinity equals zero, or the infinity within zero. The polarity charge of zero, the polarity of zero, the energy charge of zero. And I have explained how this works at a fundamental level, which is the plane as we know it, x and y axes, right? So this is the two-dimensional proof. So because mathematics as a concept that we think about is abstract, meaning it's not real life, because real life is us. We are three-dimensional, meaning our polarity charges are three-dimensional. So our realities are three-dimensional because we have volume. See, we're geometrical in nature. We're forms. We're beyond shapes. We're not two-dimensional. We are forms. We're figures. We're geometric in nature. Our nature is geometric. So this is who we are. We're not only space and vacuum. We're beyond that with spherical energy. We have a charge ourselves, a human heartbeat. Pulse of life, the pulse of creation is spherical energy. And so is the sun, the central sun of our universe. We are the epicenter of the universe, and our sun is the same. And I have provided the mathematical equations of these already, and the geometry, the telemetry, the electrogravitics, what it means to be, real, meaning being part of existence for what it is, which is part of the three-dimensional reality that we're part of. Okay, because our reality is three-dimensional. Okay, but mathematics is abstract, meaning it's not real. Mathematics is not three-dimensional. Mathematics is two-dimensional, meaning it's abstract. It's a figment of our imagination. So it is our three-dimensional ideas, our thoughts coming from our consciousness or self-awareness, explaining natural phenomena in the 3D world, the world that we are part of, this world as humans, planet Earth, the sun, what we know as the universe, which is nothing else but the cosmos, infinity. And we happen to be the epicenter of it. Our planet is located at the epicenter, the core, the heart, the center of the universe. This is our location. We are a very unique species. So if we understand these principles and we understand that mathematics is abstract, meaning it's just numbers, right? Numbers and figures. These numbers, they are a measurement. They are measuring. They're for reading purposes. So what are the readings? The telemetry? Well, the telemetry of the readings is the geometry of reality. Us, because we are what's real. Numbers are not real. They're not conscious. They're not self-aware. They cannot love. They don't have a heart like we do. Our primordial instinct is the human heartbeat. So if we understand these, and for what it is, which is objective reality, then we understand that mathematics as a concept is nothing else but an explanation of the readings of reality, which is three-dimensional, us, geometry. So mathematics is just an expression that we, with our consciousness and self-awareness and our thoughts, have devised as a species because we're intelligent, we're smart. So we very intelligent, in fact. So we can actually read the telemetry of existence. Why telemetry? Because telemetry is spherical in nature. Is the readings of everything, and everything that is real in the three-dimensional world reality beyond planet Earth, the cosmos, anything, us, the biology within us, our infinity, our DNA, is based on it's the polarity charge of 3D reality, which is us. So this is who we are. This is the only thing that is real. Everything else is a figment of our imagination. We created with our own thoughts and consciousness. So mathematics is this. Mathematics is a two-dimensional abstract reality that we have devised to explain reality for what it is. So in that way, we can process it with our thoughts and consciousness in our minds as reading the telemetry, the measurement of precisely this, of what this is. So that's why, because when you use mathematics, we're not using three-dimensional mathematics, because that will be us, our actions. So it's just, numbers is just a byproduct, is the expression of the function. And the function is us. We are the function. Everything that exists is the function. Everything that has electromagnetic fields, everything that is conscious and self-aware, everything that exists, right, at different levels of consciousness and self-awareness and love. So mathematics is this device. And the way we think of it is in mathematics is in terms of planes. So we can actually map it out in a two-dimensional way because it has two dimensions. Mathematics doesn't have more than two dimensions when it's abstract, because if you then think of it in a non-abstract way, meaning objective reality, then it becomes real. It becomes electricity, it becomes energy, it becomes applied engineering. You see? So in theory, so if you want to think of it theoretically, which is abstract because it's not practical, then you think of it in terms of planes. So the way I have provided the formulation, the proof for this observable phenomena, us, spherical energy, creation itself, the creators, because creation creates creators and creators create creations, and we were created by the creator, the sun. And then we became the sun's creation, but we have evolved into the image of the creator. So we're conscious and self-aware. So we ourselves as spherical energy can also create, and then we have creations, and our creations are conscious and self-aware. Our children are conscious and self-aware, so they themselves are creators. And this is an infinite, because we're all children of somebody. So you see, it's an infinite cycle, and then we can create non-biological things as well, which is what I'm doing. I'm making this video, and I have provided the mathematics, right, the proofs, so you understand how it works in a two-dimensional plane. So then you can put it into practice, which is a three-dimensional plane of reality, what exists. So we can have applied engineering, and we can have all these things that are beneficial for life. So let's start there, because there's a lot in this video, because this notion, this is essentially the most important equation in human history. This mathematical proof is the most important mathematical proof that we would ever devise or discover. Why? Because, as I said, mathematics is abstract. We're not creating mathematics. Mathematics is just a language that describes the real world, 3D world, who we are, our polarity charge, electromagnetic in nature, spherical energy, consciousness, self-awareness, love, humanity, planet Earth, the cosmos, everything that exists, right? Real life, geometry, reality, objective truth, objective reality. So mathematics is just a language that allows us to understand reality in a measurable way, that we can understand it and study it. So that's what mathematics is. And that's why it's not real, because it's two-dimensional, meaning it's just the reading of the real thing, which is us, whatever is real, whatever exists. It is real in the sense that it's paper, it's symbols, it's logic behind it, it's knowledge. This these concepts that are based on objective reality, but the words itself, they're not real. The real thing is what the words express, the functions, the proofs that we can then observe, because it's a practice. Because mathematics is just theory, it's a language. It's processing information in a codified manner. So essentially, if we understand this idea, so then we need to go a step further and think about what the prime mover is. Because the prime mover is this very ancient idea. It's a Greek idea, just like the sphere, just like the republic, just like freedom, just like democracy, just like the knowledge of us being the epicenter of the universe, the center of the universe. Because the Greek knew all these concepts, because they were incredible thinkers, because they understood reality for what it was. And they were very objective. So, and this is the legacy, the heritage of the ancient Greek that they have left us. So now we can build on top of that, which is what I've done. So if we understand this notion, then we need to understand what this idea of the prime mover is, this great ancient Greek concept. So the prime mover is the first mover, is the original move, the creator, meaning what created everything, the motion, the spin, the spark that ignited everything, light itself, right? That the creator. So essentially, if we understand this, they always had this idea, and that's what it led to infinity in their mindset. Because if you ask why enough time, which is the whole notion of why how, and what why how means, then you're gonna always have another question until you answer the question. So it's an infinite loop, it's an infinite cycle. So given these, given the facts, then you start to realize that this notion of the prime mover is developed, which is so, okay, so then if this is created by this, then who created that, or what created that? And then that question goes into infinity. So eventually it formed into this spherical concept, this spherical idea, telemetric thinking, based on the prime mover, which is the first mover. What was the first mover? The first move, the prime mover, that created these notions that we know as the creation of the sun. So energy is released from the epicenter in this fusion reaction, and then light originates as a result, and everything that there is, us, is actually real. So we exist. We have a heart, we have an electromagnetic field, we can think, we have a consciousness, we have DNA. How is all this possible? So this notion is known as the prime mover. But so far in humanity, because of the way society has developed and the abstract thinking, we were thinking in abstract terms. It was so hard to come to terms with this notion. So we didn't really have a mathematical proof that defines the nature of the prime mover, what we know as a creator. So, but I have provided the equation already, because the prime mover can be explained. Why? Because we understand that I have provided the mathematics already of infinity equals zero, the polarity charge of zero, the energy charge of zero. So it's based on this idea of the charges, right? And you explain that with polarity. So you have two planes, because it's 2D, it's mathematics. You explain it in that reality, the axis. And I have done that to prove what the singularity is, mathematically speaking, and how everything and all the charges of all the other numbers that come as a result of zero have their own charges, and they meet at the epicenter, right? So I have provided these as the proof. But now I'm building on top of that, because what I've done before was to prove the fact that infinity equals zero, because zero is the beginning of everything and infinity is everything. So I have proven that using mathematics, but explaining real life phenomena, 3D phenomena, which is energy, us, and I use polarity to explain it. And I have provided the proof that leads to this epicenter called the singularity. which is energetic in nature, because it needs to be energetic if it exists, if it's real, because we are energy. The sun is a creator, and it's just one of an infinite number of creators. So how is it that that works? Well, the sun has a singularity. So I explain what the zero represents from a mathematical point of view in the notion of what the singularity is, which is the point where the singular point where all points meet. What points? The points on the tension on the surface of the electromagnetic field that is generating that singularity in the first place. And there is scales to this. So the universe has its own electromagnetic field, and the singularity is our central sun. Right? All the points, all the tension on the energy of the electromagnetic field on the surface of it, of the universe, has a point of release, because it's polarity, right? It's energy. It's electromagnetic. So as it moves, then that energy needs to be released. And the way it does, so it sustains the structure, is stable. It needs a point, and that is a vortex, and that is the epicenter, which is a singularity where all the points meet. And it's infinite energy at the epicenter, because there is an infinite number of points on the surface of the sphere. And they're all polarity. They're all pulses. They're all oscillations. So, and that could be a galaxy within the universe, a life form, a species, anything. Because they all have polarity, because they're all alive. They all have electromagnetic fields. So you see, it's all that energy meeting at the epicenter that created everything in the first place. All the energy. So it feeds back. So that's what this notion of the creator is. So, because it's objective reality. And we have an electromagnetic field. The earth has an electromagnetic field. The sun has an electromagnetic field. All the stars have an electromagnetic field. The universe, the galaxies, everything has an electromagnetic field. Right? It's just energy, because everything is energy. So you see, that's reality. So I explained what the role of zero is in this. And the role of zero is the primary role, because it's the epicenter, is the singularities, where everything starts from, is the origin. Is a number that contains everything within it, and given its nature and its properties, it sustains the polarity of all the other numbers that emerges out of it, and it becomes the center. And because it never changes its state, then it allows all the other numbers with their polarities to do the rest, which is to map out the structure, the space structure of polarity itself, meaning of reality itself, of electromagnetism itself, all the electrogravitics, all the telemetry that comes as a result, which is the polarity, all the polarities of all the other numbers that come as a result of the polarity of zero that never changes as a state. Because it's just the nature of zero, because zero is the first and it's the beginning of everything, contains everything. So, and this, I have already provided the mathematics of this, but that's just the foundation. It's because it's important to understand infinity creation for what it is. You need to understand what infinity is. So infinity itself is, mathematically speaking, is the representation of it is number zero. And the zero represents the sphere in a three-dimensional reality, which is our reality. And then in an abstract reality, two-dimensional is the circle, right? So you see, I needed to build a foundation, the groundworks, have a foundation that explains what infinity is, which is zero, and what it means. But once you understand this, now you need to understand the mechanics. So how is it that zero becomes the prime mover, right? Because the whole idea is the prime mover. So what's the equation that allows this nature, the polarity of zero, that remains the stability of it, the equilibrium? So the singularity remains. So the electromagnetic field is stable. So creation is sustained to infinity, given its properties, spherical nature. So then you start to think, okay, so what the prime mover is at is the first move, prime, right? So then you need to understand that if we have identified that zero is infinity, infinity equals zero, and there's a polarity charge of it, and we have established this, then so what's the next step? So what makes that zero the epicenter of that system, the electromagnetic field, at any scale to move in the first place, because we understand that the movement comes as a result of the electromagnetic field, the polarity. And what's the polarity? Well, it's all the is right. The polarity is what? The charges. And what charges are these? Well, the charges of all the numbers past zero in the different, if you think mathematically in a two-dimensional spectrum, is x and y axes, and the polarity, negative and positive polarity of it. Each number, whether it's a positive number or a negative number, it doesn't really matter. If it's all numbers, real numbers, irrational, all numbers, natural numbers, all numbers, whether they're fractions or not, it doesn't, ratios, doesn't matter. If it's a number, has a value to it, mathematically speaking, in terms of a charge, because reality is electrical, is energy. So on paper, we need to explain it with the charges. So you see the charge leads to the polarity. So that polarity then maps out what? Well, the tension on the surface of the electromagnetic field, because polarity leads to electromagnetism, which is that movement. And the only reason why there is movement is because there is energy, because the numbers have their polarities. So all that energy creates all this movement, and that movement is spherical in nature because of polarity. And if you like, everything that is energy is spherical. So as this energy moves, right, what creates that move for that polarity to actually to happen? Because we know that there's infinite energy at zero, because it's all the points on the tension of the surface, which is all that exists, all the numbers and the polarity of the numbers on the tension of the surface of the sphere, meeting at the singular point, which is a point of release. So that energy makes the system stable, so it's not a bubble that bursts like a normal bubble, because the bubble doesn't have a singularity in the epicenter. It's just a spherical vacuum threshold, but there is atmospheric pressure, and anything that can burst it because it's not stable. So it gets burst quickly. But an electromagnetic field is the opposite of that. It's stable because it's energy, so it doesn't get burst by outside pressure or inside pressure because it's stable. And what creates the stability of all this tension on the surface of the electromagnetic field? Well, the epicenter, that is where all these points, all this energy that is moving gets released in a vortex, and the singularity is where energy gets released. So it starts to feel the space structure of within the spherical surface, right? The surface of the sphere. And all the points meet at the surface and at the epicenter, so it's stable. And that's what the central sun is. Our sun is that it releases energy, light, and it creates life within the space structure of the universe, right? Which is everything that there is. The electromagnetic field of the universe is what generates the central sun of the universe, which is our sun, the first sun, the sun of suns. And then everything is created as a result, right? So we understand this idea. But what is the first movement then? So that polarity leads to that electromagnetism. So then you got to understand. So and this is what the proof is. So if we understand this, then you have to come to terms with the fact that, well, what makes that move, that creates the first move as a result of the polarity and the electromagnetism? So what's that move, and how is that move sustained over time so the singularity is maintained due to the electricity? But it needs a first move. So then it comes again down to mathematics and understanding the principles of the sphere, because if you understand these, then you understand that, okay, so energy is spherical, because look at the sun, is spherical. Our electromagnetic field is spherical, our eyes are spherical, so we can stare at the sun. So as you see, it's all connected. Everything that's energy has a polarity, and it's electromagnetic, so it has a charge that's spherical in nature. So these, because of the axis, the polarity, electromagnetism leads to that. So everything is spherical. So then we need to understand essential mathematical principles, and this is what Archimedes did for us. He provided us with pi. What's pi? So you got to understand what pi is. Pi is this infinite number, right? Pi has no end. So if you do the math, it never ends. It goes to infinity. So you see, they understand. So we're talking about infinity. So we got now a number that we can map out with a formula. And then that can be applied engineering. So in real life, us, we can observe it, which is what I'm doing. So then you understand that. And what's pi? Well, pi is the radius, right? It's the center of the sphere and the point where it meets the surface of it. Think about it. So if you map out, so it's telling you what the sphere is infinite in nature, but it needs an epicenter, and the epicenter is pi. So pi is this number that comes as a result of the radius of the sphere. See? And that's why it's infinite in nature, because the sphere is infinite. But then we need to map it out, so then we don't have an infinite result, indefinite result, meaning when you divide any number by 0, it doesn't give you an indefinite result, because you need to map it out so you understand it gives you an answer rather, right? And this is what the prime mover is. The prime mover is the equation that allows you to divide by 0 in terms of energy. And you get an actual result rather than an error in your calculator. And the result will be energy output. And that has electrogravitics and telemetry in it. Right? And this is what the prime mover equation is. So essentially, what the prime mover equation is very simple. So if you understand the basic meaning of pi, which is the radius from the center of the sphere to the surface of it, is the radius, meaning the distance from the epicenter, and it gives us pi, and then pi is this infinite number. So then you understand that you found a number which is a prime, so that allows the 0 to be divided into infinity, meaning polarity charges, because reality is energy, it's not abstract. So you need to prove it, right? So the proof of the prime mover is precisely that. It starts with pi at the epicenter, because pi is that infinite number that has an infinite. Why? Because it's that, right? It's the radius of the sphere in relation to what? An infinite point on the tension on the surface of the sphere, which is gravity itself. The tension on the surface of the sphere is gravity, electromagnetically speaking, in terms of physics. So you need to, and gravity is what creates everything. It's a spin. So it's the tension that is gravity that allows it. It's the movement, the torsion that allows it for that electromagnetic field, that energy to be released into the epicenter, which is a singularity. Pi happens to be the ratio, the number, right? The radius at the epicenter of the sphere. So this is all connected. So pi is a number, and it's even given its infinite properties. So if you understand this, then you understand that because we're talking about infinity, is prime mover, is a root, right? You gotta think in terms of root, because it's the beginning, it's the origin, 0, the beginning, the genesis, the creator, the genesis of everything. Came before everything else, the creator. So, and we are it, but mathematically we can express it. So we have the functions, which is real life, us. So how do you explain this? Well, it's very simple. So you need to understand the root, right? So what's the root of pi? But then again, in mathematics, because it's abstract, so the models are incomplete. That's why we never been able to map out the prime mover, meaning the creator, because we're thinking in abstract terms. So it's all about the square and the cube. But if you think about the square, what's the square? Well, the square is a shape, right? It's two-dimensional. So reality is not two-dimensional, so it's not the square. And we understand what the mathematical expression of the square is. But then what's the cube? Well, the cube is then again is the volume of the square, which makes it a form, right? It's a figure now. It's three-dimensional, but still abstract, because the cube is not spherical, right? So when you do these, the cube root or the square root of things, even if it's pi, is limited, because the telemetry and the readings are limited to that expression, which is limited to a cube, which is not infinity, because infinity is spherical energy. So you see the mathematics are primitive. They're limited to the volume of that, all the, it's known as the vertices, all the different edges of these figures that are limited. The square is a shape, it's not even geometrical. So when you square something, you're not really doing anything, you're just doubling it. And this is very primitive. So it's a very easy notion. So the square root of pi is easy. Yeah, it explains it, but it doesn't explain the nature of the sphere, because the sphere is reality itself. So how do you break it down? Well, you change the factors. Rather than having an exponentiality, an exponent that is cubic or squaric, meaning square as a cube, which is 2 times or 3 times, you need to make it infinite, because infinity is infinite, meaning the sphere, spherical energy is infinite, meaning it has an infinite number of points on the surface of it. So when you want to get the root, the square root, you want to get the root of pi, you cannot calculate it based on the cube, because the cube is not infinite in nature, it's limited. And it is the same with y, because it has corners, it has vertices, meaning all these angles, they meet as an epicenter, which is not contained within the cube, because the cube doesn't have a singularity. So, and then again, the square is a primitive version of the cube, because it's the abstract version of it. It's not the real version, it's just the shape in a 2-dimensional space. So if you understand this idea, then you understand that we'll need to actually use the real mathematics. And the real mathematics is the sphere, because the sphere is volume. The circle is the 2-dimensional description of the full thing, which is the sphere, right? The real thing, us, spherical energy. And because I have explained how it works with the polarities, because it needs to be electric, it needs to be energy. Otherwise, it's not real. It's not based on objective reality, because the sun is energy. So if it's not energetic in nature, then you're not gonna get the answer. So I provided with the foundation. So what you do is an easy equation. So it's the infinite x, meaning any number, could be a negative, a positive number, a real number, a rational, any number, to the factor of infinity, because the sphere is infinite. Why? Because that number is an infinite of one of the infinite number of points on the surface of the sphere of whatever electromagnetic field that you're reading with the prime mover of this electromagnetic field, right? Because once you understand what the prime mover is, it's an infinite number of prime movers, because there is an infinite number of electromagnetic fields. But the concept remains is the same, and it applies to all, which is this mathematical expression, right? This proof. So then if you understand these, then you got any number to the factor, the exponent, right? It's infinity itself. It's any number to infinity, because it needs to be infinite for the prime mover to work. But what is this? It's not the square root. It's not the cubic root of pi. It is the infinite number of the root of pi, because pi itself is infinity. You see? So because it's the root, is the radius, right? It's the reading of the rate from the epicenter, the center of the sphere, the radius to the surface. So that's what pi is. So if you understand this, then we know that it has to be the root of it, meaning what generates pi, because pi has an infinite number of primes contained within it, right? Because it has an infinite number of numbers within it. It goes to infinity. So then again, that's the number. So all the numbers are there for that first move. So then you need to have the root, right? The root of the root, meaning the movement that makes it. And that number is 0, because it's the first number. It's the polarity of 0. It's nature. So then again, what's the equation? So we want to know what the root cause is, right? We want to know what the prime mover is. And we need to identify it for what it is, and that's pi. Because it's the epicenter, it's the radius that leads to the surface of the sphere. And there's an infinite number of those. So that's why you move away from cubic and squaring, because the sphere is not a square, it's not a cube. In fact, a cube is within the sphere. Why? Because the sphere created the cube in the first place. Because the geometry, the space structure of the cube, all these vertices, all these angles, all these different things are contained within the sphere. Because it's part of the sphere. Because the sphere has an infinite number of points in it on the surface. So, you see, so then again, rather than having that 2 or that 3 representing that root pi, right? You change that number 2 or that number 3 because you're not multiplying by 2, you're not multiplying by 3, right? You're multiplying to infinity because it's an infinite number of points on the surface of the sphere, right? There's no vertices on the sphere because there's an infinite number of points of them. That's why it spins. Because when you try to find an angle, when you try to find a corner, an edge, then you keep on going forever because it's none, because it's spherical in nature, it spins to infinity, and because its energy is polarity, it moves, electromagnetism. And this is easy phenomena to explain. That's why the sphere is the creator, because it's the only one that doesn't meet any of these limitations. It's limitless. It's part of the definition of infinity. So then again, the exponent that number x must be, the exponential. It has to a factor to infinity because it's any number. But you want to find the root of it, that number, right? The prime mover. Well, that's pi. So it's a infinite root of pi, right? That's what the prime mover is. But then that you need the equation. That equals what? Well, it equals 1 divided by 0 to the factor, right? The power is the radius of infinity. That is it's a very simple equation. But it has eluded us for so long because we were thinking in abstract terms. So non-real terms. Thinking that, because if you look at the math, it's erroneous. If you look at the two-dimensional math, it's just describing the radius of the sphere in a squaric manner, meaning as a square, and the square is not infinite in nature, so you cannot, you see, it's just a big misinterpretation. Euler and all these mathematicians got it wrong because they didn't understand what the sphere was like the Greek did. So because they went away from Euclidean mathematics, geometry, they moved into incomplete math. Let's put it that way. Erroneous. So, but then again, so what is the meaning of this, right? The meaning of this is very simple. So why is it that? Because we need to get the outcome. So when we divide any number by 0, it doesn't get an indefinite result, right? So it's not an error. So we need to have the feedback loop. So that connects us back to the system and it maintains the structure of it. So it's not a bubble that bursts. It's actually the 0 does its thing, which is sustaining the structure at the singularity of the epicenter. And the only way to do this, because then again, how do you prove it? So as I explained, it's the x, which is any number, to the factor of infinity, which is, then again, you pick the number because it's infinity. You see? So you want to know that, right? Rather than the cubic or the square, because we're talking about the sphere and the sphere is infinity. And I have already established that with my previous proof. So because of it, then we understand that the root of pi is based on an infinite number, which is what defines it, right? So that is pi, which is a prime mover. But what's the number? Because we need a polarity. It's an electromagnetic field, right? We're building applied engineering here. So then that equals 1 divided by 0, because it's the epicenter. So everything from an infinite number of numbers, it goes down to the epicenter. And what's the number? The first number after 0, 1. So you see, you're going back from 1, which has a charge, to 0, and the charge of 0. So you meet in the epicenter. So the system gets full circle. The energy gets to the epicenter, and then it needs to be released. But if you normally, if you get 1 divided by 0, you get an indefinite result, because you don't have the proof that sustains it. So you can map it out and tell you what the coordinate is on the tension on the surface of the sphere. So, but for that, you need polarity. So the system continues to infinity, right? So that's why so any number raised to the factor of infinity, the square, the root pi, the pi. What's the root of pi of any number to the factor of infinity? Because it's that. That's what the prime mover is. That equals 1 divided by 0, right? In brackets, because then that's incomplete, because it's indefinite. So you need to, because we're talking about the sphere, is the radius. And what's the factor? Well, the factor is not a square. The factor is not a cube. The factor is the volume of the sphere, which is infinity itself. So you raise it to infinity, the radius to infinity, because it's an infinite number of points on the tension of the surface. So you see? So when you divide that polarity of that number, 1 or any number, before 0, because you're dividing it by 0, is any number, right? Any number. But 1 is, I'm just making it simple so it's understandable, right? But you understand what 1 is. If you understand mathematics, you know that 1 is not only 1, is everything that is between 1 and 0.000001 before it becomes 0, right? It's a full number. And like that to infinity, right? All the other numbers on top of it. So, after, I mean. So, if you understand this, then, so what comes full circle? Because you need the rate with pi, right? Because we're trying to get the prime mover, which is pi. So how do you connect that epicenter back to the system so the energy gets released? Well, you need the rate connected. You need to connect that outcome, which is the polarity of this number that you're dividing by the polarity of 0, connected back to what? Well, to the tension on the surface of the sphere, the electromagnetic field, so it remains stable. So that is why the radius of it has a factor of infinity. So that's how the exponent of any number of the root of pi equals, in the end, 1 divided by 0 raised to the factor of the radius to infinity. In that way, you got the two infinities there. The infinite energy output at the singularity being released, and the infinite number of points on the tension of the surface of the electromagnetic field that is generating the spin in the first place for that singularity to take place. Because what's the spin? Well, it's pi, the prime mover. But you need to know the mathematics that allows the first movement in the first place, which is the singularity. And that is what? Well, it's 0, because infinity equals 0, and it's polarity. So I have provided the polarity. So now you understand. So this is when, as I explained what the equation is. But now we can talk real science now, real life stuff, because now that you understand what it is, so any number has a polarity, right? 1 has a polarity. If you think in terms of two-dimensional terms, you have, just like with 1, the polarity of, with 0, the polarity of 1. 1 has a polarity, right? And then you apply the same logic to any number. And then that allows us to build a system, because now this is applied science. You see circuitry, right? Because we have established this very notion, right? We have established this very notion already that, well, it's energy. So how do we prove it in real life? Well, we need current, right? Signal current, on, off. And what's on and what's off? Well, in mathematics, and this is why it has to be 1 divided by 0. Because how have we created everything that is modern and applied engineering based on this notion of electricity, circuitry, ones and zeros, right? Everything is based on ones and zeros because it's the system that we created, because it's the ability to use energy to power things. So it's applied engineering. So then is 1 is signal current on. So there's energy. And then that's the signal, right? 1. And then 0 is off, so no energy. So we can create a system now, ones and zeros of energy. And this equation becomes the kernel, meaning is the proof that allows the system to be able to be mapped to infinity, so we can generate electromagnetic fields that have singularities at the epicenter, right? And prove this, the prime mover. So we ourselves, because we understand what the prime mover is now, by having systems in place, right, with the polarities, because you need the polarity, and polarity is energy, is charge. So you need a charge, you need a signal current in the circuitry of the system, the design. So you can actually prove in real life, 3D, us, that the prime mover is actually not a mathematical thing that is just there, but it's actually something that can be applicable to everything. Because the thing is that the prime mover, for it to be the prime mover, it needs to be applicable to everything. Everything, because it created everything in the first place. Is the creator, is energy itself. So if we understand these, then we understand that then we can apply it to anything that is real, meaning everything that is part of 3D reality, which is everything that we can perceive with our senses that is actually has an electromagnetic field in it, right? And that's what science is, right? Applied engineering is. So applied engineering is precisely this. And applied engineering can be, I have provided on the visual, in the visual, and just a starting point of all the different branches of knowledge that are gonna be the ones that gonna benefit from the prime mover nature, because now what you can do is build everything around the polarity of any number. And when you build a system, you blueprints, right? Because what I'm providing you is the prime mover equation, meaning that you now are the creator, because I have given you what the creator is. So the creator of everything is the prime mover. And I have just given you, so understand the impact of this. I'm making history. Okay? I'm making history. But not only normal history, real history. So, real history. Because I'm providing you with the equation of creation. The creator. Us. Because the fact that we know what the creator is, and we can apply it to engineering, it means that we are the creator ourselves. So you can apply it to anything now. And I gave you examples there, but it's an infinite number of examples. Because infinity is infinite. So, but the prime mover is what creates infinity in the first place, which is what I have provided you with. So then you gotta, when you build any systems, what you need to understand is that if you need to understand that the only thing that is real is energy. So these systems, and the prime mover is energy itself. So you need to apply it to real life, which is energy. So any systems, otherwise it's just gonna be abstract, meaning you're gonna understand the equation for what it is, but you're not gonna have applicability because you're not creating systems with polarity to prove it. Right? So that's why it's applied engineering, because it applies to any engineering, right? You can apply these to, I've provided many examples there. My favorite example obviously is 0 point energy and over unity systems, because it's infinite energy from a singularity because of the charge of the system, the circuitry of it. So now we can build systems that are precisely that. And I have provided the blueprint. This is the mathematical logic of it. You know, it's coils. It needs to be coils because coils are the spherical coils. So spherical coils meeting those spherical vacuum thresholds, right? And when you have them, and you add the polarity charge to each of these thresholds, then what you're gonna get at the epicenter of these, due to the prime mover, is infinite energy output, because you're tapping into the filaments of infinity itself, because we're so close to the central sun that we're using the energy of the central sun to power our spherical devices, just like we've done before the Ice Age, and what happened as a result of that. So you see, this is very powerful, very powerful. This is the most important video in human history. So then again, is that, so you map it out, because is that, so it's very simple. And then I have provided all the different components. If you look at, I don't have it in front of me, but I designed it, I created it, so I know what it is, can go and express it. So there's all the numbers. You have all the numbers to build up the circuitry. We contain, so all, like what you call the nodes, all the different points that you need in the circuitry of your blueprints, of your designs, your actual practical building, because you need to build. This is prototyping. You need to have versions, whether it's a software, it's fine. Because then again, what's the prime mover? Well, the prime mover is the singularity. So, right? We have established this is it's a singularity. That's what the prime mover is. It's what generates the whole thing and makes the electromagnetic field stable. So is that, right? Is the infinite output, right? The stability of the sphere. Spherical energy in this case. So we can build anything with these. We can, anything, infinite energy. So if it's a software, for example, you can apply it to anything. So I have provided 3 examples there of relevant current computer stuff. So you can apply it, that equation, you can apply it to the mathematics of your algorithms, and it runs your algorithms. Because then what you're gonna do is immediately realize what it does to your algorithms. Because if you're smart and you know who I am, if you know who I am, you're very smart. Number 1. Number 2, if you know what I'm talking about, you know exactly what I'm referring to. So you can apply that to anything, really. Anything. So what I've done, I made it easier for you, right? So now, because remember, there's no other equation, it's only one equation, and this is the equation. And I am the creator, it's my copyright, okay? It's part of my book. But I'm allowing you to use it, okay? Remember that, because we're infinite, and I'm allowing you to use it. Because I created it for humanity, for the Republic of Planet Earth. I didn't create it, it was already there. I just provided you with a proof of what it is. So if you understand these, then I made it easier for you. So I also added everything there, all the numbers that are essentially the building blocks of any system, because you have the logic. I added the logic to it so you can build up the systems. All right, you just have to populate it with energy charges. You need to add the polarity to any number, and you do that with signal current on, signal current off, ones and zeros. And that's how we build in today's, this is how we build. If you want to build, you need energy. So energy is this. So I'm giving you infinite energy right? Infinite energy, prime mover. And you can apply these to any concept. It's very simple. Very simple. You can apply these to any concept. And this is beautiful. This is beautiful. All right? It's human liberation. Who we are. Free. So, essentially, with the Republic of Planet Earth, this is who we are. And this is why I'm doing this. Because we can. So, simple as that. So, if we understand this, right? Then you understand that I have provided you everything. But it's a beautiful thing because remember, all points need to meet at the epicenter. And you gotta understand that when you're building systems, because you can build networks with these. Any network. The internet. See, the internet is very limited. Because the internet, it has all sorts of limitations. Right? It has all sorts of modes in it. Right? It's a system that we develop, but it's limited because it's not free. Right? But now, with this equation, we can create a free internet without any of the limitations. Right? Because it's the prime mover. And the network will be the prime mover network. So it's infinite connection because why? Because you only need a device kernel. And the device kernel of any device, the kernel of the device, is a node in the network. And as you know, the kernel is the source, right? Meaning everything comes out of the kernel. So when the kernel of a device becomes the node in the network, it means that anything that is empowered is just like, then again, the prime mover. Everything comes out of the kernel, right? That allows the thing to work. So when the kernel of a device becomes a node in a network, what does that mean? Well, that means that, you don't need any IP or any of these primitive technologies that are built in as protocols within the systems embedded in the kernel. But when the kernel itself becomes the node, it doesn't matter what the system is because everything is contained with the kernel and the kernel itself is the node. Of what? Well, the network. What network? Well, the network that connects us all devices. Because devices have polarity charges in them, don't they? Ones and zeros, right? Then again, you get my point. So it's very simple. It's very simple. Because then, once you connect one device with another one, a node with another one, and you use a protocol that I have provided to do so, the 10x Love Framework Gossip Protocol. It's a trust layer, meaning a DLT, a distributed ledger technology, meaning it's a system that I have already proven to you, I provided the visuals already, in which the system has a feedback, so it's resilient. So as long as there is one node, because what it means is that, because it's the prime mover, it means that each kernel of each device is a singularity. So as long as one device, one kernel, one node in the entire network contains the information, then the information is stable. The sphere, the electromagnetic field, the prime mover remains because each node is a singularity of its own because they're all connected. So if you have a network of, say, all the devices of planet Earth, you cannot break it down because you would have to essentially get all the devices. And this is, as you know, not possible. So, okay. So you see, and once you build a network, then there is no need for IPs. There is no need for having to pay an internet provider to have access to the internet or data. or use the pipelines and the infrastructures and the servers of all these providers. Why? Because the hardware itself has a built-in technology within it because the kernel is running it as a node. As long as you power the device, it's fine because the kernel allows you to be connected to the node. So when you're sending a text, you're not using traditional towers. You're using the network of all the devices connected as nodes. So you don't need data. This is primitive. So you see, think about it. So this is just the found, and everything is distributed, meaning is this hash graphs, meaning this everything. This is intelligent. The system contains everything, and that is just, if you think about it, how is this applicable? Well, the DNA, because each cell has DNA, and the DNA contains everything that there is in existence in the cosmos, because we're so close to the central sun. So it's the same. You see, it's the same logic, but applied to engineering devices. So we can have a network, an internet, a free internet for the whole planet. And this is what what allows it, because you need to be a prime mover for you to be able to have a network that is this resilient. Because you see, and once the devices are connected, once you're a node in the network, that's it. Because as long as you power your phone, right, or your device, whichever device, your computer, your laptop, your tablet, whatever, your watch, whatever node, as long as that node is charged, it's part of the infrastructure. So it doesn't need any network, right? It doesn't, because the network itself is the kernel that is connected to all the other devices as a trust layer, meaning the network is stable, because all the think of each device as a node, because it's what they are at the kernel level. And think of the energy, right? Because a phone is electric, right? It is electronics. It has signals in it, ones and zeros. It's charged. So, right, the kernel itself becomes a prime mover because there is a zero at the epicenter, because you're using the prime mover. And by doing that, that means that that node itself is connected to all the other nodes, which are what? Well, the tension on the surface of the sphere. The surface of the sphere has an infinite number of points, right? And nodes. And they're all connected to the singularity, which is what? Well, the kernel of the device, right? That connects it to what? To all the other devices. So that's just an example. And this is a perfect example of what reality is, because it's just a scale. So then that's just an example, right? But then you still need to build apps, right? You need to build all the ecosystems, all the systems, because this is real life. So then again, it's based on this equation, because this equation is the proof. It's a prime mover. Can be applied to anything that has polarity in it, which is everything that is real. So applied engineering is crucial for this, right? Because now you have the proof. You can do it, right? So, okay. So then again, this video, I have provided you with everything that you need. Everything. If you know what I'm talking about, you got anything you need. Everything and more. So now, what's the next step? Well, it's understanding this notion, right? Because I added it there as a 2D, 3D. So what's 2D? Well, 2D is this notion, right? It's abstract. It's not real. It doesn't exist. But it's kind of how we make sense of things, right? So what is that? Well, I mean, I put it there in terms of like degrees and percentages, right? 100% or 360 degrees, which is 2D, because this idea of 360 degrees is an erroneous idea. This is incomplete sets of mathematics, because it's based in ideas that are not objective. Okay? So think about it. So why is it that the circle, which is nothing because it's a shape, it's not real. The only thing that is real is the sphere. The circle is just a representation of the sphere, right? In a two-dimensional space, right? Which is abstract because two dimensions don't exist, right? So you gotta understand this notion of angles, vertices, corners, edges. All these concepts come from primitive geometry. This notion of shapes. And 360 degrees comes from this idea of the sphere, but it's the circle, but it's not real that, because 360 is just based on the system, is base 60, which is a primitive system. So essentially it's trying to measure everything around the earth, but not the earth itself, but the earth in relation to the sun. And because the earth has revolutions, right? It turns around its own axis every day. We call that a day. One full spin, a turn, is a day. So if you measure it by, like we know as a year, in a year, so it's the time that the earth goes full circle, meaning it goes on around its own axis, one full circle, right? That's a day. But then you have the notion of the sun, which is a creator in the first place, spherical energy. So, and it's how many spins, revolutions does it take for the earth to go around the sun? One full revolution around the sun. It's called translation, but it's also known as transition and all that. But that is 365 days or something like that, right? But this notion of 360 is a facade, is a figment, is whitewashing, really. So it's incorrect. So what it is that because you need kind of like to measure things, right? So what they've done is that because there is 365 days, what they've wanted to do is to have a system that they can control. And the system became base 60 because what's the closest number that can give you a base that's kind of like workable and practical from a measurement point of view, that it's in alignment with this planet going one way around the sun. And why is in relation to the sun? Because the sun is a creator. He's the central sun of the universe, cosmos. So he's a creator. So you need to create a system that is mimicking the creator for it to work. Otherwise it doesn't work. So, but then if you create a system based on 365 days or something, then it creates all sorts of distortions. So you need a stable system. So what you do that, you use base 60. Why? Because then rather than using 365 days, you use 360. Because then you can use base 60. And base 60 gives you like 24 divisors, right? And then you can create a system around that. So this whole notion of 360 degrees comes from this idea of 360 days, which is not even a complete set because the Earth takes 365 days, but they wanted it to approximate enough so they can have a base system, so then they can have mathematics that are dogmatic in nature. Okay, so then again, because 360 then becomes this abstract idea that the circle has 360 degrees, which is nonsense. Because first off, the circle doesn't exist in real life. The circle is the sphere. Because real life is polarity, who we are. But in this abstract world of fantasies and illusions, when you create a circle, which is a shape, and you create mathematics around it, you need to make it sound and logic, right? So the numbers add up within that fake creation. So that's why you create this illusion that there is 360 degrees in a circle. But that's not true. because this notion comes from the notion of the planet Earth in alignment with the sun, and the rotation and the translation of the sun around the transition of it, the revolutions. So then again, you see, it's an illusion. A whole system of mathematics have been designed around degrees that are not even real. Because what's a degree? Well, then again, it's based on the square and the cubic stuff, right? It's the square. What's the square? Well, the measurement of two angles, so you can multiply by 2. And then you have all this geometry, which is not real geometry. It's based on these notions that are based on 360 degrees, which is not real math. Because a circle is not reality. And in fact, a circle doesn't have 360 degrees. Because if you want to make the circle real, well, you have to think in real terms, which is the polarity of that. And once you have polarity, then it's spherical, and the sphere is infinite. So you cannot, you see, immediately the system collapses because it doesn't make any sense. Because it's not true, it's a fantasy, it's illusions. And then you start to have people who believe in the system based on 360 degrees. Because if you think about it, right, you have your gadgets. All these gadgets, all these devices, right? And then you can measure things and angles with it, right? 90 degree angle or whatever, right? Square or whatever. And then you get in the measurements of it, right? And the phone is telling you, okay, so this is this degree or this that degree. But that's not what the phone really is doing. The phone is converting the real measurement, the reading, the telemetry into degrees for you to comprehend, because that's what you were taught at school. You see, the fantasies, the illusions, the lies. Because in reality, what the real telemetry is radians. So it's the actual degrees, the actual angles, the actual curvature of the sphere based on pi, which is what I provided you with. The prime mover equation based on pi. Because pi is the epicenter, so a sphere is an infinite number of, so you need the radians rather than, and you never heard of radians before, have you? Why? Well, by design. Because they want you to know degrees, because it's not real, right? It's based on kaput mathematics, right? Not real mathematics. So what is the meaning of this? Well, the meaning of this is that you have an actual device, a gadget, doing readings of actual telemetry using radians and pi. And then once it gets the readings, it converts that into degrees. So you see it, oh, that's degrees? Oh, so that's where we hit it. Because you are taught at school a system based on nonsense, which is 360 degrees. Which is based on these incorrect notions. Because if you actually run things based on 360 degrees, you won't get to the destination because you're not actually using the correct telemetry. Right. So that's why when you have a compass, it's magnetic poles, right? Because it's using the polarity of the planet Earth because it's spherical in nature. So it actually gives you the precise location because it's based on magnetic field, which is real life. It's not giving you a degree. The answer is not a degree, is it? The answer is a location. And the so-called 360 degrees is just radians, which is based on pi, which is the real thing, which is what allows the prime mover to be in the first place. So you see, so all these ideas receive 100% is the same. Percentages of what? Of 360 degrees. And we have created this culture around these notions of 100%, 360 degrees, and then we think that's life. When in reality it isn't, because it's all mathematics based on base 60 system, which is it's the worst system there is. So I'll break it down in a future video as to so you understand how bad the 60 base system is, and how that base 60 system has led to all sorts of problems and distortions in reality, as we know it, all these fantasies and all these illusions. Because of it, we think, a lot of humans think in fantasies and illusions terms when it comes to basic objective reality, because the notions are around 360 degrees, and which is abstract, it's not real. The only thing that is real is us, objective reality, our senses, our heart, our consciousness, our self-awareness, everything that we can see. And for that, you need real math. And real math is the prime mover, is infinity equals zero, the polarity of numbers. And I have provided you with these answers because these are real things and there is real answers. So I have given you the answers. You see, the answers are clear. The answers are clear, and I have already provided you with the answers. And the prime mover is that. So the prime mover is a creator, okay? And when you know what the creator is, and you can use the creator, what does that make you? That makes you the creator. Because now you have the wisdom of creation itself, the creator itself. So we ourselves become creators. Why? Because we were the creators in the first place. Our consciousness and self-awareness and our infinite DNA allowed us in the first place to exist. Because we're light spherical energy, we're light spherical beings, just like the sun, but at a different scale with the biology of infinity. This is who we are. So you see, so this video is about that. It's precisely that. It's moving away from the fantasies and illusions of this two-dimensional reality, which is nonsense, into the real world, the real reality, which is 3D, us, spherical energy. So you see, mathematics is important because it's this language that we have created to think in real terms, because it's only real when you can apply it. That's why this whole 2D system of degrees and stuff is primitive. Just think about the technologies powering everything and how everything is limited. Why? Because it's not real. It's based on dogma. It's not real. But when you use real math, then you start to get real results, right? So that's just the way it is. So this is what this video is. This video is about that. It's a prime mover. It's a mathematical equation of the prime mover. Okay? It's a mathematical equation of the prime mover that cannot be applied to any context, anything in our reality, which is the 3D world. Okay? So just, I have given you everything that you need. Everything that you need. Everything. Now what you need to do is to create whatever you want to create, because you have everything now. Okay? Humanity, I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. I'm so Ra-Ray. We are the Republic of planet Earth. We're the citizenry of the Republic on planet Earth. I love you all with all my heart, with all my mind. This is a prime mover equation. Okay? I love you all.